Hi, my name is Jim Beinlich, President-elect of the South Carolina chapter of HIMSS. I'd like to welcome you to our security webinar for October 2022. And now I'd like to turn it over to Craig Wright, our moderator.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to South Carolina HIMSS chapter security webinar edition, October 2022. We've got three great panelists from across the cybersecurity world that are going to be joining us and answering questions and hopefully giving you a little bit more knowledge about how to be more careful and protect yourselves and your companies and your data. With that being said, we have representatives from the Tenere Group. My name is Craig Wright. I am the VP of Sales at Tenere Group. We are a cybersecurity engineering firm, so we work with our customers to help them build, plan, and execute their cyber initiatives, and we work very closely with them to be an extension of their cybersecurity team. We also have Semperis, Checkpoint, and Fortinet. So I've introduced myself. I am the moderator today, and I'd like to introduce Jay Mervis. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, good afternoon. My name is Jay Mervis. I'm the Fortinet Healthcare Sales Director for the East on the healthcare team here at Fortinet. Reside in Charlotte, North Carolina, 20 plus years experience in the business, and looking forward to a great conversation today.
Thank you, Jay. Looking forward to talking with you today and getting your insight. Next, we have Sean. Is it Deuby? Sean, is that the right pronunciation?
That's right. I like to say, and it's true that I'm one of the Deuby brothers, but just not those Deuby brothers.
So I couldn't ask you to borrow any money right now.
No. So I'm director of services for Semperis, and I've been in the identity universe. I've been doing, I've been doing Microsoft identity as long as Microsoft has been doing identity, and one of the original architects of Intel's Active Directory, and ran it for 10 years.
Very good, very good. Well, welcome, Sean. I'm looking forward to speaking with you as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Jason Prost with Checkpoint.
Hey, Jason, I am the head of growth technologies for all of the Americas, Canada, US, and LATAM. I cover Checkpoint's cloud security product line, its workforce security product line, and its overarching architecture that covers its portfolio.
Awesome, Jason, welcome. Looking forward to speaking with you as well. And I would just like to point out, look, we all face each other in various aspects and in competitive ways in the market and working with our customers, but we come here today as one, and as one to help evangelize the cybersecurity message across the platform. This isn't about amplifying any one product or one vendor. This is about helping our customers and healthcare partners be more secure, because at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same battle. We just may be doing it a little bit differently. Would anyone like to add anything to that?
Yeah,
well
Craig,
said.
Well said, but nobody on this call wants to see any of our customers or partners get compromised. So,
Absolutely.
We're all on the same table, and I think one of the benefits of having a roundtable such as this is that you're getting great perspective from broad-reaching vendors. So I think this is absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So I'm going to try to do less talking, more asking questions, and letting the experts share their knowledge. So let's go ahead and jump in this and get started. First question: what is the current state of cloud security in your opinion? And Sean, I'll start with you on that question.
You know, it's interesting. So as I sort of said in the beginning, I'm an identity guy, and it's so fascinating to see the shift in security from on-premises to cloud, from on-premises, why would I ever do anything in the cloud, to what I like to think of as the center of gravity has shifted that way. Specifically for identity, I remember, so in a previous lifetime, I was also technical director for Windows IT Pro magazine and wrote for it for many years. And in that role, I was doing early interviews of identity as a service, IDaaS. vendors, some of which are not around anymore. And I remember when I first heard that concept of who would ever outsource their identity to a cloud service. And yet, look at where we are. It's just a fact of life right now. And I think one of the things that we recognize for this is that organizations are using more and more cloud security because they have the resources to secure their environment that almost no on-prem enterprises really have. The analogy that I like to use, it just comes to mind for me all the time, is of very, very large castles. So very large castles, and then you have the villages around the outside of the castles. And when the barbarians are hordes are coming to you, the villagers go run behind the gates of the castles. And I think of that as like, the big Amazons and Microsofts and the other large cloud service providers and security providers to help protect with resources that your average organization doesn't have. So that's my very long-winded way of saying, yes, I'm all about cloud security.
Yeah, that's very insightful. It sounds like you might be a Game of Thrones fan as well. Jason, what is your take on the current state of cloud security?
I think that over the last 2 years, a lot of the different events that have occurred that weren't necessarily directly tied to cybersecurity or even just IT infrastructure have had a dramatic impact on cloud adoption. That rapid shift to work from home and has resulted in cloud adoption. It's resulted in cloud focus and attention. And what I think is very exciting is that not only is the market responded with interest and excitement about cloud, but the industry, the people here today and many of the other suppliers that are out there, the industry has responded with, I think, an effective response that is supporting cloud security in a dramatic way and making it a practical business investment.
Awesome. I definitely tend to agree. Jay?
Yeah, I'll chip in. I love how, Sean brings us in to make us all feel young enough to remember certain things in the business. But the current state of cloud security is it's one of the fastest evolving things we have going on. And what you talked about, Jason, is the work from home. How do we enable those services? How do we connect things up? And it's maturing faster than I thought it would. So there's a variety of different competitors coming out with new products. Most of the healthcare provider space is interesting because it was very averse to going to the cloud, and now they're consuming so many SaaS platforms. The proliferation of Office 365 and what that's done for getting people their foot in the water, and then moving, different use cases to AWS, Azure, and then GCP, Oracle, SAP, what have you. So it's a well evolving. How do we connect all this up? Protect first. It's an exciting time, to be truthful.
Yeah, and what I see in the field is a lot of customers excited to go to the cloud, but also, hey, we want to make sure we're doing it securely as well. And that adoption has been, it's been fantastic, and I think it's just going to keep going uphill from here. So moving on. So this is an interesting one, and I almost touched on that, but a lot of questions that I get are around cloud security and on-prem security. Which one's more secure? Is everybody going to go to cloud? Is everybody just going to stay on-prem? Jay, I'm going to stay with you on this question. What's your thoughts around cloud versus on-prem?
So I don't think the answer is which is more secure, is what's best for the organization. How do you go and deliver all of your policy? Provider space, the payer space, and some of pharma, it's going to be a hybrid world for a long time in the healthcare market. I don't think you're going to see any customer, and if they tell you, I don't believe it, but they're going to go 100% cloud consumption. They might have a cloud first because there's certain things you can buy and then go customize, whether it's a ServiceNow, whether it's Salesforce, Microsoft product. But the cloud versus on-prem, I think a holistic strategy is what needs to be done, where you have less point products, more platform solutions and have that consolidated threat intelligence to stay in front of the threat actors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sean.
I think we're going to see a hybrid environment until long after we retire for the foreseeable future, especially in healthcare, where you have so many IoT devices, smart medical devices, connected medical devices. They have embedded operating systems. They've got custom operating systems. When I was at Intel, and I won't date what we were trying to shut down an old operating system. I won't date myself by saying how old it is, but it was an embedded operating system running in multi-million-dollar tool machines, and they were never going to be upgraded. And we certainly weren't going to throw them on the trash heap because they had an older, less secure operating system. We ended up firewalling them off and all that, and they'll keep going until they've outlived their usefulness. So I'm all about hybrid. We started and all the hype was, oh, public cloud. And then we realized that one size doesn't fit all. Then remember private cloud? How many people do you know have implemented private cloud? I don't know, not so many. And so what we end up with, of course, is the middle ground of hybrid, where of course you've got on premises, you've got to keep the business running, but you start expanding where it makes sense into the cloud. And I don't see that changing for any time in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely not. And maybe the pendulum will swing a little bit further to the cloud, but ultimately I think it's going to land right back in the middle. And to Jay's point, it's going to be what's better for the customer. So Jason, I know, knowing you, I know you have an opinion on cloud versus on-prem.
I'll be a contrarian. As a programmer and a developer from eras gone by, I won't date myself, but I think that everyone's spot on. We're not changing to a cloud-centric, sole cloud-centric environment very quickly. We will exist in a hybrid environment. We will have to maintain on-prem security. There's no way that we're going to be getting away from IoT. That's gigantic. However, academically, I would make the argument that cloud is technically capable of being more secure. So cloud, if it's done properly, is capable of being dramatically more effective because of the agility that exists in the cloud environment. You're able to drill down. When we talk about things like identity, the ability to implement identity-based access control and identity-based policy in cloud is far more capable than it is on-prem. And the ability to leverage the integrations that exist in the cloud is far more accessible. So cloud provides us with an opportunity to be dramatically faster on the cybersecurity side, the same way that they are on the business and development side. It doesn't eliminate the need for on-prem. It doesn't take away our dependency for on-prem or the manner in which we have to implement security. But the security side on-prem is going to still require layers of security and rigorous management that aren't quite so automated or orchestrated like you have in cloud.
Cool. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you, Jason. All right. So when it comes to security, what are some of the advantages cloud servers have over on-prem servers? And I probably bet it probably depends on the person and the flavor that they want. But Jason, I'll again stay with you here to lead this question.
I mean, certainly on-prem, there are specific advantages with regards to, I think, operational advantages that exist in terms of I own the equipment, I'm able to manage the equipment, et cetera. But when I look at cloud infrastructure, things like, for instance, if we just look at something as extremely basic as physical security, I'm pretty confident that Amazon and Microsoft have much stronger physical security than many organizations that have data centers have employed. Layers and layers of physical security and rigor that are in place just to secure the actual infrastructure that cloud servers run on. But cloud, when you look at cloud and you look at the advantages that it has for an application or for infrastructure, scalability, flexibility, resiliency, the ability to do orchestration and automation, dynamic resource allocation, et cetera. Those are all things that cascade into cybersecurity. Look at infrastructure as code. And an ability to look at that infrastructure and to make adjustments and assessments on it in advance, or look at microsegmentation, an ability to go drive down all the way to code level and Lambda function level, or look at native control integration that exists there. Those are things that I think we've aspired to be on with on-prem servers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jay, what's your take, cloud versus on-prem?
Yeah, I think the cloud advantage, number one, is just the automation. Now, the concern on going to the cloud is to make sure that those policies are out there. A lot of customers maybe 2 years ago would think, oh, I went to AWS or Microsoft and it's secure. That's not always the case. You have to put the policy and extrapolate it out, and it allows you to scale bigger and faster. The on-prem component delivers those local services, but with the whole pandemic and work from home and enabling, work from anywhere, that's the advantage on building out those systems faster, better, and more secure, as long as you have the right ecosystem of what you're going to deliver.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And the automation part is definitely a relevant point as well when it comes to the cloud. Sean.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on what Jay was saying. And, in terms of building the infrastructure and the cloud infrastructure, one of the major advantages, since a lot of what we talk about in these discussions are malware attacks, cyber attacks, is the ability to spin up clean VMs that have no malware on them. So if you have a scorched earth environment, but you have templates for all of your major server roles, and you have to restore your servers to a previous state, the idea of being able to spin up 10, 20, 30 different virtual machines almost instantaneously to then perform restore operations on, or even initial setup operations on, greatly decreases your recovery time in the case of a ransomware attack.
Very good. Very good. So moving on, some of the major ways threat actors can gain control over corporate networks. And I'm sure these are pretty vast. Sean, what are your thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, it's a laundry list, but when you're a hammer, everything's a nail, and I'm an identity guy, so of course it's about identity-focused attacks. But it's not just me. That's pretty well recognized. Credential attacks. I just saw, and I think I even have it sitting up here on my page. Password spray attacks. So password spray attacks from 2019 were, I think, 44,000. Microsoft saw 44,000 password spray attacks in 2019. And in 2022, it was 5.4 million password spray attacks. Now, a password spray attack is, it's a brute force attack turned upside down. So instead of hammering one account with a bunch of different passwords, you hammer a bunch of different accounts with the same common password, and it's very effective. So they get in through credential attacks, whether it's on-prem or whether it's in the cloud, frankly. The joke is they log in, they don't break in. And then once they're there, I think the process is pretty common how they gain control. At least on-prem, Mandy, and we've seen this many places, says that 90% of their customers that they go in incident response situations, 90% of them Active Directory is involved, either directly or as a pathway to gain access to the databases, the data that they really care about.
Yeah. Jason.
I'm going to break my answer into two parts. I'll echo the comment with regards to Active Directory. In a prior life, when I worked with a vulnerability research team, Active Directory was always a primary target, and I think it's something that we get to talk about a little bit later. I think there's two things to look at with regards to it, especially relative to this conversation. The first one is enterprise as the entire thing, and the second one is cloud. From an enterprise, from the broad enterprise capacity, I would look at it from two particular areas: social engineering and unsecured assets. Not insecure assets, unsecured assets. Assets that the business has elected to not secure. It's one of the things that we find is just a dramatic gap in many enterprises. Just the lack of, I don't need to put security on my phone. I can't put security on my phone. And yet that's allowed to connect into the network and participate on the network. IoT was already brought up. It's another great example of unsecured assets that sit in our enterprise and we're not paying attention to. The social engineering is a big one, and it's a big reason why identity is so important. If someone's able to socially engineer their way to your username and password, they don't have to break in, they just log in, as was already pointed out. From a cloud perspective, there are two key things, though, that organizations should really be looking at. The first one is misconfiguration. It moves so fast that misconfigurations are prevalent. It's one of the reasons why posture management is so important inside of cloud security, because you're working on third-party platforms where that misconfiguration, if it's not being audited and checked, can lead to insecurities and vulnerabilities that you didn't anticipate or expect. The second one is secrets. We just had a major breach that happened recently at an organization out there. We, being the world, just had a major breach at a large organization because of secrets exposure, the ability to put the unintended consequence of releasing code into the cloud that has API passwords and shared secrets in the code that is put to the cloud, that's then available to be scraped, or into your GitHub repositories, that's able to be scraped, be able to be found, and able to be used to, again, log in versus break in.
Yeah, yeah. And Jay, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, my thoughts are I got the short end of the stick on this draw after following Jason, but social engineering has been one of the biggest ones. The threat actors are getting more and more sophisticated, and life is easier for them to find data. I'll tell you right now, my dog's names are security and lunch. So, I mean, if you're going to go try to get my password, you don't know my dog's names, but I refer to them as security and lunch when I talk to people, because you don't know who's going to go and try to compromise your password. That's also led to a bunch of different breaches with money getting transferred hey, the CEO can't come out of a meeting. This threat actors get more and more sophisticated. They're modeling what they're reaching out and saying through phishing campaigns to executive assistants and other people in the organization, that they know how somebody's going to talk to someone. They're scraping all this data out about an email. The APIs, huge problem with how things are connected everywhere to get access to different systems. The last one is still the old-fashioned phishing. They're getting a ton of credentials, or they're getting people clicking on things, malware embedded in there, delayed, all the different kind of hacker tricks and tools. There's tools out there that they're automating and selling now. So you can go buy ransomware as a service, which is absolutely a bad place for the world to be in right now. So, yeah, I mean, I do run a vlog and my own podcast, and we're going to have security and lunch on soon. So,
Jay, just to add, you mentioned your dogs and that sort of thing. So way back in the day, I was an IBM VM systems programmer, and I saw in plain text everybody's passwords on the password file, and dogs and kids. I'm telling you, dogs and kids.
Dogs, kids, birthdays, lucky number. I mean, that's it's pretty common, right?
Yeah.
If you're an identity, so if you actually saw everything in clear text, people haven't changed behavior in 25 years. So
right.
Yeah, I a couple of years ago, I did an employee health fair at one of our healthcare customers, and I just simply went to the website, how strong is my password? And as people came through, I had them type in their password, and it tells you exactly how long it takes a hacker to break in. And you would not believe, it was like 1 second, 1 minute, and they were doing reasonably. I could not see the passwords. I mean, it was, the characters were covered, but it just gave them an idea of, wow, I really need to make my passwords stronger, because that's, it's, the employee is the common weak link at the end of the day. And,
yes.
And as you pointed out, Sean, dogs' names and kids' names. So I don't have a kid, and I never use my dog's name in my password. But anyway, that's just me.
I like to say the weakest link is the wetware.
Is the wetware? Describe wetware, Jay. I mean, Sean.
Oh,
So-
it's the soft stuff in there. That's the weakest link.
Gotcha. Yes, it is. It very much is. So moving on. Common struggles or missteps organizations make with their cloud security strategy that you could share. This is kind of like Tales from the Crypt right here.
Well, I think that somebody said something earlier. Is the probably the most or one of the most common missteps is the assumption that when you set up in the cloud that the defaults are secure. And that's not the case. And I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let Jay and Jason elaborate on whatever they think.
Jay, I'll give you the longer end of the stick this time.
No, I'll take the medium road, but I think one of the things that's changed for the better is that security was never originally at the table. It was the developers, they're on deadline, and the business people saying, get this product or this service out, and then stuff would happen that was bad. Now security is at the table, whether it's endpoint, whether it's cloud, whether it's clinical, or on the back end business. So there's much more heightened awareness in the investment in security folks, but it's more of a partnership instead of saying, oh, I've got to go call the security team or the CISO to get approval on this. So I think that original misstep of not having security at the table, and then everybody's much more conscious. Nobody wants to be in the paper, so they're listening to forums like this and gleaning some data out of here that, hey, maybe we need to make sure that, there's somebody that goes and double checks what's going on in the cloud. And are we using a consolidated platform to go and watch everything that's going on with our on-prem, public cloud, private cloud, and everywhere something's residing from a SaaS perspective. So that's the best strategy you can have is to have less point solutions and more of a platform approach.
Agreed. I definitely agree with that approach. Jason.
Well, I get to dovetail right off of Jay, which is great. So there are three main struggles that I know that we encounter regularly with the customers that we're talking with, struggles that they're encountering and they're trying to solve for. The first one that we see is best of breed siloism, and it's in the cloud, it's exacerbated because of the rapid pace that cloud has adopted and shifted. You can go race to posture management today. And in 6 months, they're going to be leveraging containers. And in 3 months, they're going to be leveraging functions. And in 2 months, they're going to be leveraging rapid DevOps shifting and a variety of other things that get pushed out to the cloud. That best of breed siloism makes it a staggered chase that is incredibly difficult to keep up with and maintain. And both Jay and I and the companies that we work with, we very much are believers in the value that platform is able to provide. And I think it's something that companies really should be considering and looking at, because that's a big problem out there.
I'm sorry, listen, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Two more, and I'll be quick. Native cloud controls dependency, we talked about that. That's a big one because very rarely are you locking in on one cloud provider. You're going to take advantage of IBM and Oracle. You're going to take advantage of Azure and AWS or Azure and Google. And therefore, if you have a strong dependency on native controls, you're now having to stitch everything together across those platforms. And that ends up creating weakness. So a multi-cloud strategy requires a multi-cloud solution that gives you visibility. And the last one is an unchecked flow from dev to ops. We're seeing a lot of that. There's a massive growth in what happens going from dev to ops, going from left to right, and how you look at security in that manner. And it's very important that you're looking at that, because that's a gigantic struggle out there as well.
Absolutely. And what I was going to say is that one throat to choke model is the single platform versus many throats to choke.
Well, yeah. The other problem you have there is the resource constraints. So over the years, we've had people age out and there's less people that are qualified security professionals. And the way the threat actors have gone and put so much pressure on business, there's not enough people. And if you don't automate and you don't have consistent policy, that creates an opportunity to get compromised.
Yeah, interestingly, the one throat to choke is now a tertiary value in platform. It has to do with the ability to leverage orchestration, automation across the different contexts without having to do some third-party integration, and it provides a tremendous value.
Yeah, and the uniform controls that allows for that resource constraints to have multiple people understand the same technology they're leveraging versus I have such and such expert, expert. And that guy goes on vacation or that gal goes on vacation, and then everybody else is trying to cover for that, and they're not a subject matter expert, and that's when customers run into trouble.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that we could spend an hour talking just about this subject.
You can summarize it in a simple way. No one goes and looks for best of breed spreadsheets anymore, and there's a reason why.
Right.
All right. So Active Directory, why is this such a target? And I know this kind of came up in one of our other questions, but Jay, what's your thoughts on Active Directory being a primary target?
So if the Active Directory from a hacker's perspective is the crown jewels. If they go compromise Active Directory, they shut everything down. If you look at any of the major breaches, regardless of industry, and the after action report, if they compromise Active Directory, that's what's kept them out of business for 1 day, 3 weeks, 3 months, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we don't want anybody to get there.
Absolutely. Jason, back to you.
I think that Sean will probably be able to dominate this answer pretty strongly from an identity perspective. But I mean, Active Directory is central to identity. It's central to policy within IT infrastructure, and it is one of the most common platforms in every enterprise in terms of that Microsoft platform. So, additionally, the other thing I would point out is just simply that no one is looking at Active Directory as security infrastructure. They're looking at Active Directory as IT infrastructure, and therefore security is secondary or tertiary on that system. It's usually offset and put as a perimeter element, which means that the server itself and that which is on there is typically very wide open once you're there. It is definitely the keys to the kingdom.
Yep. And Sean, I was leaving this one wide open for you to bring it home.
Sure. Sure. As Jason said, so at Semperis, we talk to a lot of companies with active directory infrastructure, and you were talking about security versus infrastructure and ops. And we are seeing a trend of the AD teams moving more and more to security as organizations realize that it really should be a security function. But it's definitely not there 100%. I think it's pretty well known. Everyone says Active Directory are the keys to the kingdom, but AD is also the treasure map to the goodies. They tell you right where once you're once you're on a domain, you can find out where the databases are. That's part of what makes AD so useful. But it works for bad guys as well as good guys.
So only the keys. It's the keys to unlock all the maps to the doors and all that good stuff.
Well, and it has its own pathway to spread the malware called group policy. So, and I think I just read about this. I think Lockbit just updated itself to be able to have a group policy module to be able to spread the malware. A friend of mine said, your Active Directory environment is a 22-year-old history of bad choices. So, over many, many years, what happens with the system administrators. It takes a lot of effort to do the least privileged model for integrating an application or anything like that. And how often we can all raise our hands or don't raise our hands, have said, all right, this is good enough. I need to get going. And then it's never revisited again. So there's a lot of configuration drift. And I think the problems with conventional recovery solutions, in the case of a malware attack, don't think about domain controllers that have got malware on them when they try to recover them. And one of the last ones, and I won't dwell on this, won't hog this anymore, but we mentioned this earlier, is that there are declining Active Directory skill sets. AD's 22 years old. It's old enough to drink. And the people that were AD experts are retiring. They tend to have gray hair and things like that. And recovering or protecting and managing Active Directory in a malware attack it's a 300 to 400 level skill set. It's not just for someone that learned how to create users and delete users and manage groups and things like that. And that's another real challenge.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
Sean, on top of that, with identity access management being your bread and butter, with mergers and acquisitions, we've seen a massive consolidation in the healthcare space on payer,
yes,
provider, pharma, and a company that knows they're getting acquired. They've got, an age, whatever the situation is, where they have less talent there at some point in time. They know they're getting acquired. From day one till 3 years, there's a lot of neglect, whether it's networking, infrastructure, Active Directory. And so they get targeted during the one of 7 phases to get compromised during a merger. So
yeah.
it's
Mhm.
wild.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the parent organization has all of these forests from all of their acquisitions that they're like, yeah, we know about it. And they sort of do something about it. Yeah, we've got trusts with them. But, it's, yeah.
Yeah, and legacy data, Active Directory, you talked about that roadmap to go in to get the databases everywhere. Legacy data that you got to keep for 1, 3, 5, 7, 18, 10,000 years. That stuff's all out there that, there is an identity component that's could be compromised. So
Yeah. Yeah. We find that, sometimes, and especially at the higher level, the C-suites, they think everything's okay. But they don't really understand it. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. So moving on to our next question, identity management and cloud security. Again, Sean, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I sort of talked about that a little bit earlier, is the idea of outsourcing your identity management to a cloud service seemed outrageous. But the reality is, and Jason was talking about, you can make better apps in the cloud than you could ever make them on premises. Well, if we accept the fact that we've got a hybrid environment, we've got on premises that's not going away anytime soon, all of a sudden, the power of the cloud security provider to get you single sign-on, to give you layers and layers of sophisticated multi-factor risk-based analysis to protect those apps far outshines what you can do on premises. I spent 10 months at a large telecom provider trying to shim their legacy on-premises applications and give them added security through what we now call SASE, Secure Access, or ZTE. I can't remember, but we know what we're talking about. And it's difficult. It's hard to rewrite the apps. It's hard to shim the apps. But once you're on the far side of it, you've got a much better application. So I'm all in for cloud security, and the same thing about the conversation about the platform, the integration that comes with the platform. If the cloud security provider has done a good job, way easier to run the controls for a busy, overworked security department than to have to manage all these individual best of breeds that don't talk to each other.
Absolutely. Jason.
I think that identity management is incredibly important inside the cloud, and I think that it is going to be driven because the business functions are able to take advantage of identity throughout an application and throughout the cloud infrastructure. But from a security perspective, it's incredibly important because you're able to cascade identity all the way down into microsegmentation. It allows us to be able to expand into zero trust and to drive identity-based decisions throughout the cloud stack, which is incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. So, Jason, how do we keep up with the increasing sophistication of the attacks that we are reading about in the news and seeing in the media?
Well, I think that there's probably 2 ways that organizations should really look at it. There's a rat race that goes on in security where companies chase bleeding edge technology in order to be able to address what they perceive to be the latest threats, the latest risks in an organization. I really think that it comes down to 2 things. One, Organizations should make sure that they are leveraging tools that provide strong prevention. If you're able to mitigate attacks before they occur, you're able to address much of the threat and much of the work that goes into investigation. The second one is to shore up your weak points. Rather than chasing, I would argue, rather than chasing the latest technology for endpoint security, the question is, where are your weak points? As I mentioned before, mobile phones and mobile devices are incredibly relevant and prevalent in business today. Doing a basic maturity assessment of your cybersecurity strategy can show where those gaps are and can help you find where the technologies are that you need to end up investing in to address those weak areas.
Absolutely. So Jay, what are your thoughts on the sophistication of attacks that we're seeing out there?
Yeah, Craig, I think it's a couple different things. One is people, process, technology. Do we educate our folks, within the organization not to open emails, understanding what could possibly happen? Is there a process to go add new technology? And then the second component is, do we have a strong security program? Jason alluded to the maturity. Are we evaluating where from a mature perspective? A lot of the feedback we've had from our customer advisory board or significant customers has been, hey, we do not want 1,000-point solutions. We don't have the people to run this anymore and like chasing the greatest new technology, but we want to get in front of ransomware. So we're going to leverage a couple of key partners and 5 to 6 key OEMs that make enough technology that's all connected together in their ecosystem that's going to go and provide, because somebody's great at identity access management or great at cloud, and then they have 12 other things. Also, do they have something that differentiates them, like a Deceptor tool, so that we can investigate and be in front of ransomware from a security perspective? The other thing is some of the value-added resellers that are out there or consulting groups, they'll come in and it's not just a security tool or managed security product. It's a program. Do you want to get ahead of ransomware? Do you have these things for your backup? Vault for clean data. Do you know how to negotiate? I don't know how to use my phone, but does your CFO know how to buy crypto? Are you going to have a negotiator on retainer? That's what some of the real strong value add resellers go back to customers with and say, here's a piece of paper and this is what it costs. So if the objective is to not get compromised, sure, there's some things within everybody that is an OEM has in their portfolio to get ahead of ransomware, but having a program that's going to go and leverage less key partners, but have those partners deliver strong solutions and educating the folks in the organization to not click on anything.
Absolutely. And Sean, how do you see this from your side, the ID side?
Well, both, Jay said, and I think that this is really true, is most organizations, they need to incorporate knowledge of how to deal with ransomware that none of them have had to do before. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. But to what Jason was saying, you can chase your tail over increased sophistication, but the reality is most of them do everything they get in, they do the same thing. Once their initial access, it could be through RDP, it could be through credentials, whatever. The ransomware, the threat actors are not interested in, let's try this latest variation on my thing. No, they want to get the data, they want to exfiltrate the data, they want to then lock you out, do the double ransomware, all of that, double ransom. They're not, and because I was a journalist for many years, you tend to get wrapped up on the latest variation, but they're going to keep using what works. And if you haven't put in your security defaults, and if you haven't run some, there's a variety of free security analysis tools for Active Directory. If you haven't closed those holes, it doesn't matter that you're not running SolarWinds Orion. It doesn't matter because they just got a common password and they just logged in and they just owned you in 10 minutes. So that's what I would say. And one final thought on this from what Jason was talking about is I totally agree on protect the entrance, protect the, the NIST cybersecurity framework, identify the threat and protect against the threat. But I think you also have to be fully cognizant of the fact that the odds are uncomfortable that they're going to get through. So you need to make sure that you've thought about all of your recovery options as well, so that they do get through, you can recover. The better you can recover quickly, the less you necessarily are forced to negotiate.
Absolutely.
And most CISOs, sorry, Craig, go ahead. No, most CISOs, their attitude now is not, if, it's when.
Mhm.
It's the truth.
Absolutely.
Different mentality on that, right?
It is. And that mentality is definitely shifted to, I mean, because before it was, well, I'm not a target. It's what I always heard. I'm not a target. Now it's, well, when I get compromised. And going back to what Sean was saying, and dare I say, even the hackers are looking for the most effective and efficient way possible to do it. They're not out there just willy-nilly, well, let me try this and try this. They're going with the tried and true and what works. And there may be some tweaks in there, but they're going to get through eventually. And I think, guys, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I think we're on our last question, if I remember correctly. I hate that it's ending so soon because it's been such a, I guess for me, educational conversation. But what fundamental things should an organization be doing to reduce their risk with cloud adoption? And now we're kind of stepping back into that cloud. I feel like the theme of this has been cloud a little bit. So what can you do to reduce that risk, Jay?
The biggest thing is having security at the table. 2-3 years ago, that was not happening. If security is at the table to understand what those controls look like, whether it's in AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracle, SAP, and then the on-prem, having that same posture and same process controls, that's the biggest thing fundamentally the organization should be doing to reduce risk.
Absolutely. Sean.
Well, while I completely agree with what Jay's saying, I would say in addition to that, recognize that you have to look, because we're in a hybrid environment now, recognize the fact that both on-prem and cloud are a security boundary. So you have to secure on premises so that your cloud will be secure. Because of the hybrid environment, one of the aspects that came out of SolarWinds that most people didn't realize is that the threat actors in the SolarWinds, what Microsoft called SolarGate, had compromised on premises completely, which is what gave them control over Active Directory Federation services, which is what allowed them to forge SAML tokens. Mm-hmm. So you can get in from on-prem into the cloud. There's now ways to get in the cloud to down to on-prem. So you have to look at it as a holistic security boundary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Jason, we're going to let you wrap this whole thing up. Your thoughts on reducing your risk?
So I'm going to reverse the order of the items that I had been thinking about, because I want to dovetail nicely off of what Sean had noted. There's a reason that the federal government is driving aggressively towards zero trust architecture and leveraging zero trust principles across the federal space. Every agency has mandates and has budget to drive into zero trust. And the reason is that we can't just assume that a source is trusted because they're coming from the enterprise, from on-prem. As Sean said, we have to look at all of the different layers, and we have to drive down to reduce trust zones. Where better than in the cloud are we able to employ zero trust principles? And it's because of the fact that we have this micro-segmentation down to features that we have access to, that we're able to leverage, that are able to employ identity components and understand the data in the context, which leads me to my second piece. Make sure that you have an effective identity strategy and identity security employed. It's essential if you're driving to a zero trust environment that you're leveraging identity. It is the first cornerstone of zero trust is identity. So identity is huge. It's there for phishing mitigation, corporate password misuse, MFA, other things, all of those things that sit under identity. And then the last one, and this is just a very general statement, but it goes to something that Jay had sort of noted at the beginning about making sure that we're at the table, that security is at the table. And that is that you need to move security at the speed of cloud. We have lived for 30 years. I have lived for 30 years in the cybersecurity industry around 18-month sales cycles and procurement cycles and system life cycles. That was if we were lucky. Otherwise, we were on 2 or 3 year cycles. And because of that, businesses are comfortable with a very, very formal waterfall type of life cycle. Cloud doesn't function that way. You have to be able to move at the speed of cloud. You have to make sure that security at the table is being able to understand not just what you're needing today, but what your intention is to do this year, next year, 3 years from now, because you're going to move even rapidly faster towards that than you anticipate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, I think we're at the end of this. I want to say a huge thank you to Jason Prost with Checkpoint, Sean Deuby with Semperis, and Jay Mervis with Fortinet. You guys were amazing today. Your knowledge and expertise is very evident. And I really hope, in going to our audience out there, for those of you that joined us today, if you can take one tidbit of information that's been shared with you and help secure your environment or help protect you a little bit more, these fine gentlemen on this webinar have done a little bit of their job. I'm not going to say their job completely. I'm not going to let them off the hook that easily, but they've done a little bit of their job. Guys, thank you for being here. We really greatly appreciate it. And a big thank you to the South Carolina HIMSS group for allowing us to be here and allowing us to evangelize this message. We really appreciate, you allowing us to participate in your organization. And with that being said, I'm Craig with the Teneo Group. If anyone else out there has any questions, you can reach out to any one of us. We'll be happy to talk to you, come in and meet with you, whatever the case. So please don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. We're here to help at the end of the day. With that being said, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Craig.
much.
Thank you, Jim.